Good afternoon. This is Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. We apologize profusely for the technical difficulties that we were having this afternoon. This is a rarity, but it does happen on occasion. We are so excited to be here with our good friends from Beat the GMAT for today's webinar on profile development and how you can set yourself up for admission success starting now for your round one applications next year. And I will tell you, we had some amazing results, people who just really on paper numerically should never have gotten into Harvard or Stanford or Wharton or Yale, who have been getting into these top schools in round one. And the most successful cases are those who got started, November or December of last year and really built up that profile in late 2013 and early 2014, and then were really successful in moving forward. So we're excited to share with you the tips that we have today. If at any point throughout the webinar you have any questions whatsoever, please just go ahead and put those questions into the question box, and I will answer those questions just as soon as I can. All right, so getting started, here is our agenda. So I'll start with some very brief introductions of me and Stratus Prep for those of you who don't know us. And then we'll talk about what the business schools are looking for, and then what steps you need to be taking over the next coming weeks and months to set yourself up for admission success. Then we'll talk about key takeaways. I'll give you some case studies of success. And then we have an exclusive Beat the GMAT partnership offer for all of our friends here on the site. Great. So first, to tell you a little bit about me, I am Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. And I went to Harvard for both my MBA degree and my law degree. And at HBS, I was in the top 5% of my class, which is a Baker Scholar. And I went to Georgetown undergrad. I had a 780 on the GMAT. And before starting Stratus Prep, almost 10 years ago now, I worked at McKinsey and Lehman Brothers. I am also the MBA admissions columnist at Forbes magazine with my column called The Launching Pad about MBA admissions and MBA admissions strategy. These are some of the schools that our folks got into this year and last year. Every year we send many, many folks to Harvard and Stanford and Wharton and Columbia. Even folks who have, we had 590 last year on the GMAT get into Harvard. We've had folks over 35 this year get into both Columbia and HBS and Stanford, and those were both domestic and international applicants. We had one in the UAE, one in India. Great, so that's a little bit about where our clients go. Where do our clients come from? So our clients come from all different industries, technology like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn, finance like Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or BlackRock or Blackstone, consulting, Bain, BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte, PwC. Also nonprofits like Teach for America, Teach for India, the Gates Foundation. And Stratus Prep has also been featured in the media. Our most recent article that we're particularly proud of is we were named the 22nd fastest growing education company by Inc. magazine. And there was no competitor in the top 5,000. So over the last 3 years, we were the 22nd fastest growing education company in the U.S. And so we were really, really excited to be named to that designation. So what does Stratus Prep do? If you've never heard of us before, we do both prep for the GMAT and admissions counseling for MBA programs. So if you're taking the GMAT or you're taking the GRE, we tutor folks all over the world using our digital tutoring platform. So you see your tutor live. The tutor has a digital blackboard. You see that live. And all of our tutors have scored in the top 1% on the GMAT. And they have all gotten into and gone to top 5 MBA programs. They also all have at least 2 years of teaching experience, and they all work with us full time. So it is a very, very high bar to work with us as a tutor. In fact, there is no company that has a higher requirement in terms of the score and the amount of experience than Stratus Prep. In terms of our MBA admissions counselors, all of them have also graduated from Harvard, Stanford, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Columbia, or Chicago. And they all have at least 2 years of admissions experience in addition to having attended those schools. And they also have at least 2 years of admissions counseling experience before they join us, and they all work with us on a full-time basis as well. And then finally, our clients benefit when they do admissions counseling with Stratus Prep from a team approach. So you have your counselor who is working with just you and maybe 5 or 10 other people. Then you have your school-specific essay reader, okay? And our school-specific essay readers, many of them are former adcoms from those very schools. Then we have professional proofreaders and editors to make sure that the writing is absolutely perfect. And then I personally provide strategic input on every single application that comes through Stratus Prep. This is my favorite slide about the company. So if you look at the bar chart at the left, all of the little blue bars are your chances of getting into these schools if you apply on your own or if you apply with one of our competitors. And the orange is our lifetime success rate at these schools. So if you look at Harvard, Harvard's like our lifetime success rate at Harvard is approximately 60%, whereas last year the acceptance rate was 12%. Wharton last year was about 15%. Our acceptance rate lifetime there has been 70%. And you see most schools were in the 65 to 75% range. And our clientele is truly global. Last year we had clients from 32 countries and 39 U.S. states. This year it will be over 50 countries. So what does it take to get into these top schools? What are the schools looking for? So first, they want to make sure that you have dedicated enough time for your test prep so that you have scored, hopefully in the mid-700s, enough time for your essays and personal statements. They want to see that you've dedicated enough time to the recommendation. So you really want to get started as soon as you are ready, as soon as you know. I mean, we have folks whose parents signed them up who are still in undergrad who are working with us to be best positioned for an MBA, way down the road here. So we work with folks to make sure that they will be, in really excellent shape over the next, say, 10 months until they apply in September of next year. You also need to go through an introspective process, okay? So you need to spend a lot of time figuring out with our team, who are you, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and if we can discover those weaknesses early, we can fill those in so that you will be as successful as possible. Then we need to build a profile that will distinguish you and differentiate you from both the larger global applicant pool and from other applicants who are similar to you, okay? Because you're not only competing against the entire applicant pool, you are especially competing against other people who are similar to you. Then we need to customize every part of the application to each school. And then finally, we need determined, committed, seasoned experts to review and edit your personal statements and essays. And that's what our team is excited to provide. All right, so who are you really competing against when you apply to school? So if you are a woman, from India who's an engineer who works in consulting, okay, you are competing against other women who are engineers from India who work in consulting. If you're a male in finance in New York City, you're competing against other males in finance in New York City. So basically, the way that the schools admit folks is they want a diverse class. They want diversity by region. They want diversity by undergraduate major. They want diversity by industry and function. And they want diversity by gender. And the classes right now are about 65% male, and the schools would love them to be more closer to 50-50. So men are evaluated against other men. Women are evaluated primarily against other women. So that does make it a little bit easier, just a tad easier to get in as a woman. If you're from one of the more competitive locations, New York City, San Francisco, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Shanghai, Beijing, you're going to be evaluated against other people from those same geographic locations because they're only going to take so many people from each area. And then you're going to be measured against other people from your industry and your functional area, like whether you work in marketing or finance or human resources, other people who work in the same area. Okay. And then what are the business schools? How are they evaluating you, right? So once we know what bucket you're competing against, how are they evaluating? And so they are looking at 3 different buckets. First, your vital stats. And the GMAT score is important, but it is more of a hurdle. So we just need to get over that hurdle. And once we get over that hurdle, there's no additional sort of benefit to getting a higher score. So once you get over, even in the most competitive pools, over 720, 730, there's no additional benefit to getting a 780 or a 760. It would be a waste of your time to be retaking the GMAT at that point. Okay? In some less competitive groups and regions, it may even be like 680 or 700 that is the threshold, and once you clear that, there's no reason to keep working at it. Now, some schools, like Wharton, for example, will not only look at your overall GMAT, but will also look at your quant in particular. And so Wharton, for example, likes to see 80% plus, which is a 49. It's a high bar. Columbia, Chicago, they like to see the 70th percentile. To take the GRE, they want to see a really, really high math score in the GRE, because the math on the GRE is significantly easier, and everybody knows it. So that makes the bar that much higher. Then they're also going to look at work experience. How much work experience do you have? But much more important, what is the quality of the work experience? So we had people who got into all three of the top three schools this year with like 1 year of experience this last cycle, 2013 cycle, with 1 year of experience, and people with 10, 12. In round one, we had somebody with 15 years of experience who got into Stanford. So it's not about the number of years as much as about the quality. What impact have you had? How have you led? How have you collaborated? And then also, they're looking at your leadership positions and your extracurricular activities both during college and after college. You have to be an extracurricular leader after college as well. And finally, they're looking at the undergraduate GPA. Okay, that's important as well. Particularly at Harvard and Stanford, less so at other schools. So for example, Harvard, Stanford, they want to see 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 and above. A lot of times they want to see 3.6 or 3.7 and above. Whereas other schools like Wharton or Columbia will admit people regularly with 3.0 or even below 3.0. I'll show you a case study in a moment where we had somebody with a 2.7 who got in. But a lot of people only focus on this top vital stats bucket. They don't focus on the entire package. They don't focus on the fact that the schools also care a lot about your unique story. So, we had an applicant from a very difficult pool, over 35 years old, from an engineering background, extremely difficult, who got into Stanford in round one because that applicant did a great job with us on the unique story. Didn't get in because of a high GMAT score, didn't get in because of a high GPA, got in because of the unique personal story. So the schools want to know, who are you? What are your values? How did you learn them? Where did you grow up? What's your family like? What are your greatest accomplishments? What setbacks or obstacles have you faced, and how did you overcome them? And what makes you really unique and diverse and special, and how will you contribute to the diversity of the class? Okay, and so this is critically important. It is the way that many students end up getting in. And then why business school? Why do you want an MBA? Why now in your career does it make sense if you only have a couple years of experience? Why do you need to go now? If you have many years of experience, why do you need to go now? And then why our particular school? Why our particular program? And what will your unique contributions be? Great. So we just had one question from a slide or two ago. Or I guess it looks like a couple of questions. So somebody asked what our track record is at Kellogg, and it's approximately 70%. So that is our lifetime track record there. That is the answer to your question. All right, great. So now let's get into what specific steps you need to take, okay, to be ready for success going forward. So first, you've got to think about your timeline. And most of you are probably thinking about applying in round one, and they keep moving the round one deadlines up. So this year was early September is when round one started. And so there are huge advantages to working on your profile in the next 2 weeks. Because guess what happens in about 2 weeks? In fact, I guess it's 2 weeks from today is the end of the year. And if you start doing an extracurricular activity or get on a board or whatever before 2 weeks from today, we're going to be able to list that as 2014. And they're not necessarily going to know, very few schools ask month and year, whether you started it on January 1st or on December 31st. And so that's why it's so critical and important to get started now for round one. This will allow us to identify your weaknesses, figure out what's going on. Once we figure out what's going on, and what gaps we need to fill, we can work on starting to fill those in the next 2 weeks. We won't get everything filled in the next 2 weeks, but it's going to be a huge advantage to get some of those gaps filled in the next 2 weeks so that they show up on your application as 2014. And I can tell you this is a strategy that was proven to work from last year. I mean, it worked extremely well for people last year. So time is on your side, okay, in the sense that if you make changes now, they will look authentic. If you address weaknesses and gaps in your profile, it's so far out from when you'll be applying, right, that it looks authentic. If you're doing stuff a year in advance, 10 months in advance, right, they're not going to even be thinking that you were doing it just to do an MBA. But if you do these things in June or July or even May, they begin to get suspicious. Oh, like, yes, the person knew they were going to apply for an MBA in 6 months. Okay? So if you start now, by the time you start the business school process, your changes will have been in effect for over a year or about a year. Certainly by the time they're reviewing your application, it'll be over a year. Okay. Then here is my checklist of all of the things that we need to be thinking about as you prepare to apply to school. So what's your GMAT score? Okay, what schools are you looking at? And we will make suggestions of probably some other schools. Sometimes people aren't looking at Harvard and Stanford, and we actually think that they can be competitive, and they're underestimating their abilities. You know, they're thinking it's only about GMAT score, and it's really not. And so we'll say, we see this in your profile or this in your background that would make you particularly strong. Then we've got to do brainstorming and introspection. We've got to think about your personal story and what makes you special and unique. And then essay outlining, okay? And so we have to think about, you know, how are we going to outline your essay for each of the schools. Then we'll go over resumes, recommenders, essay writing, and then we hit submit. And then after we go through all of this work with you, we still have to do interviewing, of course, and financial aid. And right now, with the exception of Harvard and Stanford, every other school is offering merit-based financial aid, full scholarships. So last year, in the last cycle, in the 2013 cycle, we had full rides at Wharton, MIT, Chicago, Columbia, Kellogg. So you can get full merit-based scholarships at these really great schools, okay? At these really, really, really great schools if you position yourself correctly. And you can even negotiate between the schools, okay? And so that's something that people don't realize. We had somebody last year who had a full ride at MIT but really wanted to go to Wharton. And with our help, was actually able to negotiate a full ride at Wharton as a result, okay, and is now at Wharton on a full ride. So let's talk a little bit more about the GMAT. You obviously will need to register for the GMAT. I studied 9 months for it. That is probably overkill. I will be honest, okay? I would say study 4 to 5 months. And what we find to be the best way to prepare for the GMAT is to do private tutoring, okay, in combination, of course, with self-study. A GMAT class really isn't terribly useful. And the problem with the GMAT class is that everybody's at different levels, and they have to cover a little bit of everything, but they can't cover anything in great depth. And so that is the issue that we face. And we used to do GMAT courses, but we found that tutoring was so much more effective that we moved to an all-tutoring model, just because how can you justify when tutoring is giving people increases of 200 points and courses are giving people increases of like 50 to 100 points? Well, clearly tutoring is another option. It's also much quicker, so it gets the pain over with much more quickly. And then in terms of should we take the GMAT, should we take GRE, unless you are applying to a school that requires the GRE like as a dual degree program. Okay, so like if you're doing some other master's or PhD or graduate program that requires the GRE, that is the only time when you should use the GRE. The schools don't want to get involved in this fight, right? There's this fight between between the makers of the GMAT and the makers of the GRE, and the schools don't want to get involved, but they strongly prefer, and I can tell you, as an accredited admissions counselor, and very few admissions counselors actually are accredited, meaning that we get to go to the conferences with the schools. As an accredited admissions counselor, behind closed doors, the schools say, we really want to see the GMAT, okay? We really, really, really prefer the GMAT. So the way we work is we give you a diagnostic. You take that diagnostic, and then we create a customized curriculum. We have an entire curriculum, but we create a customized curriculum for you that is based on your weaknesses on that diagnostic And then we give you 4 more diagnostics throughout your tutoring with us and keep tweaking the curriculum so that by the end, you are in the very best possible position to get, your 730 plus on this exam because we have spent all of our time attacking the areas where you are losing points. Okay. So next we have school selection. And so in the spring, it's really important that you be doing school visits because when you apply in round 1, most schools do not allow school visits in the first month of school. And so the problem with that is since they don't allow school visits in the first month of school, if you want to do a school visit before you apply, which you do, you have to end up doing it in the spring semester. So we need to start planning now because the spots are going to fill up for the spring what schools you're going to visit. And so we're going to look at, okay, so what type of job do you want post-MBA? What are your long-term goals? What are the best schools for that? Where do you want to live? Do you want a large school? Do you want a small school? What's most important to you? And we're going to make recommendations. At the end of the day, you choose all of the schools that you apply to. We don't try to, push you into any school you don't want. But we want to make sure that you're pushing yourself and that you're, extending yourself to the very top schools for you. Okay? So, if we think you have a shot at Harvard, we're going to encourage you to apply to Harvard, assuming it's a good fit for what you want to do. And then we're going to need to come up with different strategies for each school because different schools are looking for different things. So like Harvard is looking for global entrepreneurial leaders, whereas Stanford is looking for, innovative collaborators, whereas Wharton is looking for data-driven analytical problem solvers. Okay? And so schools are looking for different things. And so if we don't customize our strategy and our approach to each individual school, we're not going to be successful. And we've got to do all that before you go on campus because once you go on campus and you start talking to the schools, you can really mess things up. And we don't want you to mess things up. We want to get ahead of this problem. We want you to really know the schools inside and out so you can ask intelligent questions and impress admissions committee members and students and alumni and faculty when you're on campus because all of that stuff is getting recorded. So when you think about school selection, obviously ranking is important. I went to Harvard. I get it. Ranking and brand are very important. But we also need to think about specialization. What field do you want to get into? Do you want to get into finance? Do you want to get into marketing? Okay? Because there will be schools, Kellogg, for example, has the best marketing and management consulting recruiting in the world. So if you want to go into one of those 2 fields, Kellogg for management consulting, followed very closely by HBS, are going to be the best schools for you, okay? So we don't want to, if you want to go into finance, we want to seriously be looking at Harvard, Wharton, Columbia, Chicago, because those are going to be the best schools for that. Then we've got to think about location and how big of a school do you want? Do you want a school in an urban environment? And then cost as well, and taking into account scholarship possibilities. Harvard and Stanford only do need-based scholarships. They don't do merit-based scholarships. So if scholarship is really, really important to you, and you don't think you're going to qualify for need-based, and we'll walk you through how that need-based scholarship determination is made, then Harvard and Stanford may not be the best choice for you if money is a driving factor. And I should mention, people spend a very small amount of money with us versus the amount they make by working with us in terms of additional scholarship money, right? So, you might spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 with us versus, if you go ahead and look at how much we're going to help you make, it may be $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in additional scholarships. So that's another important factor to consider. So as I mentioned, academic performance is important. Another thing we need to get started on immediately is getting you registered for classes for the January semester. So, if your GPA is a little on the lower side, okay, a way to boost that up, particularly for Harvard and Stanford to care a lot about it, but I would do it for every school, is to take 1 or 2 online courses, not through Coursera. Love Coursera, but it's not going to work for these purposes. An online course through a top U.S. university, okay? So if you have a low GPA, you'd want to do that. If you have a low GMAT, the schools that care a lot about GMAT, like Wharton and Columbia, that could be a way to deal with the GMAT, as well as we would suggest retaking. But guess what? The semesters in the U.S. start in August. Well, that one already passed, and it'll be too late by the time you're applying, and January. So if you want to apply, we're getting people registered. I just helped people choosing classes the last couple of days that they're going to take, and this is called generating an alternative transcript. And I will tell you, I had a 3.96 out of 4. A 3.96 out of 4. I graduated #1 in my class from undergrad. I still created an alternative transcript and took statistics and accounting from another university before applying to HBS. So after I finished my undergrad, I did that alternative transcript about a year before I applied to HBS, and then applied to HBS to demonstrate that I had that skill set. As I mentioned, the schools are going to look at your work history. So what impact have you had? Have you been promoted, or have you moved from one company to another, which was effectively a promotion? What about entrepreneurship? Have you demonstrated entrepreneurship and innovation? And even if you work at a Fortune 100 company or a Fortune 50 company, you need to be demonstrating entrepreneurship and innovation. Everyone who works with Stratus Prep needs to be an entrepreneur. You know why? Because the schools have spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars developing centers for entrepreneurship, innovation labs, and they want students who will be able to take advantage of them. So they take many students from huge Fortune 50 companies, General Motors, General Mills, things like that. I'm being told that there is a problem with the audio. So I am seeing if we can resolve that. Give me one moment. This is our day of technical difficulties, apparently. Let's see. It seems that the audio is corrected. If you can hear me, definitely let me know again. But I am told that the audio is now corrected. So if there is an issue, okay, I'm told that the audio has been corrected, so there was just a little blip. So I'll just go back about 1 or 2 minutes in case you couldn't hear that. So in terms of work history, okay, they are looking at not just how much work history you have, which is actually much less important, but what is the impact that you have? What about promotions? And have you been entrepreneurial? Have you been innovative? Because even if you work at a Fortune 50 or a Fortune 100 company like a General Mills or a Procter & Gamble or a Citibank, the schools want you to have demonstrated that you are an innovative thinker, you're an entrepreneurial thinker. And the reason for that is, that you want to be sure that you are demonstrating you're an entrepreneur, even if you have no interest in being an actual entrepreneur. You are what we would call an intrapreneur, somebody who brings the techniques of entrepreneurship and innovation into larger companies. And the reason the schools want to see this is they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars creating these centers for entrepreneurship, okay? And these centers for innovation and these innovation labs, and so they want students who demonstrate those characteristics. So if you haven't done that, we need to start working together now to be sure that you are, in the very best position for success, okay? And that you take on some projects now that demonstrate that you are entrepreneurial, that you are an innovative leader, okay? All right. Next, international experience. So the international experience has to be more than study abroad, okay? It could be work. It could be work experience. And this is another reason to get started now, because sometimes you can get, a foreign assignment for 6 months. It could be extensive service projects. So as you're planning your vacations, and your vacation time from work, you may want to spend it doing an extensive service project, something like that. So, I think that those are things that we want to be sure are, things that are being taken into consideration, because you've got to have that international experience. It could be working with a diverse team, things like that. Great. Then extracurriculars, and as I mentioned, they want to see a deep commitment, strategic leadership, high-level impact, strategic thinking, not just during college, but also after college. So that is really, really important to the schools. They want to see 1 or 2 activities where you were a strategic leader more than just a fundraiser during college and then after college as well. Other ways you can demonstrate leadership are through athletics, okay, through the military. And we've had people from the U.S. military, the Indian military, the Singaporean military. Doesn't have to only be the U.S. Student government. So these are other ways, in addition to community and extracurricular involvement, that you can demonstrate that strategic leadership. And so if you're not, for example, right now on the board or the junior board of an activity, we need to get you on that. And that doesn't happen overnight, okay? I serve on a lot of boards. I have served on a lot of boards. And so that's going to be, really, really important. All right. You want to make sure that you are also beginning to coach and to prepare your recommenders, okay? So that they demonstrate through example that you are the strongest amongst your peers. And they may need help crafting those examples. So you need to demonstrate leadership, collaboration, analytical rigor. Okay, you need to demonstrate communication. And maybe you haven't demonstrated all of those things yet. Okay? Well, what we need to do is we need to get the recommenders, particularly somebody from your current company or organization, and we need to sit down and say, now, what am I going to need to have in that recommendation to get into Harvard, and what do I have, and what am I missing, and how can you, boss, help me to take on a project or to take on a new initiative that will make that work. All right, contacting and selecting recommenders, okay? Sooner is always better, okay, because you want to, don't go to them and say, can you be a recommender, right? Go to them and say, I'm thinking about business school, what do you think? And get them bought into the process. You also want to choose wisely. You want to choose the people who really know your work. Doesn't matter what their title is. Neither of mine, doesn't matter where they have a degree from, okay? Neither of my recommenders had gone to Harvard, okay? One of them had an MBA, one of them didn't. Neither of them had, a CEO or a managing director title, okay? But they knew my work really well, and they were willing to invest the time to create absolutely exceptional recommendations. Everything in there was true, but we worked together on it for a long time to make sure that they were hitting on all the right buttons for what the schools are looking for. And at this point, we want to have some backups because you don't know who's going to leave the company, who might not, be available at the time when they need to submit the recommendations, things like that. So we really need to get working on the recommendations as well. You also need to be thinking about your resume, and your resume is going to need to demonstrate a track record of results. So we'll need quantitative evidence and qualitative evidence of your success, of your track record, okay? So what we want to do is look at your resume right now and see where the gaps exist so that we can address those gaps and then move forward. We want to optimize your resume, in other words. Now, you never want to lie because the schools are going to do a background check on you once you get admitted, okay? And they use a professional international background service company, international security company. And so you never lie about anything, okay? You also want to make sure your volunteer work is captured on the resume, as well as that your leadership positions are really highlighted so that we understand that you authentically have been involved in things since 2014 or before, right? This is the benefit of getting started now with this work. Okay, it helps to optimize the resume. And then you need a clear reason that you need to go to business school next year. And it's got to be more than just technical skills. Why should a top 3 or a top 5 or a top 10 school take you? Why is the education you're going to get, not the brand? They don't want to hear you talking about how wonderful their brand is. They know their brand is wonderful, but everybody wants their brand. Why is their education so important for you to get into the school or for you to get into the career and have the impact and be successful throughout your life in the way that you want to? Great. So finally, I think now is the time to think about a team of experts. And I just wanted to share one statistic with you, which is that according to the top 10 schools themselves, of people who get admitted into these schools, 57% admit to the schools in a confidential, supposedly confidential survey that they used a professional admissions consultant. 57% of the people who get in, okay? So the successful people, successful applicants. Now there's a group of people who will never admit, even in a confidential survey, that they use an admissions consultant because they just want to act like they got in on their own, or they don't want the school to know, and they're not sure if it's, since it's online, is it really confidential, whatever, okay? So that number is definitely higher than 57%, and according to some data that we've seen, it's probably in the most sort of competitive areas, 70 to 80%, okay? So having an admissions consultant is not alone what makes you successful. It's having the best admissions consultants, and that's why I want to show you some case studies, okay, of work that we've done and how we've gotten people into the best schools. So Rob top 25 non-Ivy League undergraduate college, 3.7, strong GPA, just okay GMAT, 700. It's good, but it's not exceptional. Admitted to Stanford, okay? And he had 2 years of management consulting experience. Alex, he had 4 years in finance, a 670. He went to a small liberal arts college, also not Ivy, and he was admitted to HBS and Columbia. Our good friend Victor, who was our most successful Indian applicant ever until somebody from round one, who got into Stanford with pretty much comparable numbers, but also being over 35, which is unheard of. And also had a, neither of them were IITs, which is the most prestigious schools in India, but this new person's school was less prestigious than Victor. So 3.0 when you converted it to a US GPA, 670 on the GMAT, consultant, entrepreneur, admitted to HBS. And then remember I told you that Wharton takes people with lower GPAs, so 2.7 GPA and a 720, okay? Jennifer was admitted with our help to Wharton. So that's just a sampling of the kind of folks that we get in. So what are the key takeaways? Recognize that it is tough to get into business school, and it is getting tougher every year. If you're debating about applying this upcoming year versus the next year, apply this upcoming year. Every year it gets harder. Some regions are seeing increases of 20, 30, 40% from one year to the next. For example, India, the number of applicants there is just skyrocketing up. Budget enough time, okay, be prepared, and then know your target. Know what Harvard's looking for. Know what Stanford's looking for. Know what Wharton's looking for. They're very different schools. Yes, they're the top three. But if you say the same thing to them, or if you're recommended to say the same thing to them, you're not going to get in. Right? So what's interesting is Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton have changed their recommendation questions so that they are identical. And so that way they're hoping the recommenders won't sort of do separate recommendations, so they'll really get the same answers from everyone. Okay? You don't want that. You want, when they're talking to Harvard, your recommenders to be emphasizing global entrepreneurial leadership. When they're talking to Stanford, even though the questions are the same, they want to be shifting their focus to innovation and collaboration and teamwork. And then even though the questions are the same, when they're doing your Wharton recommendation, they've got to be focused on data-driven and analytical problem solving. And then, obviously, if you're going to work with seasoned experts, it makes sense to get started sooner rather than later. So we have a very special exclusive partnership offer for you. The first 75 Beat the GMAT community members to email consult@Stratus Prep with BTG15 in the subject line will be eligible for 15% savings if you enroll by December 29th. Everybody else will still get 10% until December 29th with the code BCG10. So if you want that 15, email now, because there are more than 75 people on this webinar at this exact moment. So email now, consult@Stratus Prep, BTG15, so that we can set up a consultation with you and you can get the extra 5% off. If you're watching this webinar on the YouTube channel, still email. Maybe the spots haven't all been taken, but if they have, we'll let you know that you qualify for the 10% discount. Everybody who watches this video, whether live or on Beat the GMAT's YouTube channel, will qualify for at least the 10% off if they sign up by December 29th. And as I was saying, signing up sooner rather than later, especially since we're at the end of the year and we can make some strategic things in terms of board memberships, extracurriculars, service involvement at the end of the year, it's really, really valuable. We offer everyone a free 30-minute consultation with me. You only get one per life, so if you've already had one, unfortunately, you can't have another one. You can still take advantage of the discount, but we can't do another consultation. I can only do one per person. And then we are always happy to provide you with a reference. If you want to give us a call, you can feel free to do that in the U.S. at 212-307-1788. So if you're outside the U.S., just put 001 in front of that. 212-307-1788. You can also check us out on the web at www.stratusprep.com. And if you want to sign up from the website, you just click on Enroll and then Business School Services. And then you have to decide the number of schools. Most people do 4 to 6 schools. If you're from a particularly competitive area like New York finance, San Francisco entrepreneurship and tech, engineering in India or China, those folks will tend to do a little bit more, sometimes 6 to 8 schools, but you can do any number that you like. So the emails are flowing in. So already we've got over 37, so over half of the spots are taken. I'm being told by my team they're updating the numbers very rapidly. So we're almost up to 50 now. So if you want that 15% off, email us at consult@stratusprep.com with BTG15 in the subject line to qualify for that discount. All right. Great. So we are going to extend the webinar, which was supposed to end at 2 o'clock, until 2:15 so that I can go ahead and answer all of your questions, okay, or at least as many questions as I can get to before 2:15. So we are extending the webinar due to the technical problems. I am going to just take a moment here, and we will take a moment and let me open up the questions box again, and we will get going on your questions. All right. All right, just pulling these up. Okay. All right. So here we go. I'm going to do as many of these questions as we can. I may not get to all of them. If I don't get to your question, you can send it to consult@stratusprep.com, and we will be happy to do that. So to schedule your consultation, just go ahead and email consult@stratusprep.com. If you've already emailed for the discount, we will reach out to you to schedule the complimentary consultation. So emailing consult@stratusprep is the best way to do that. What is the fee structure and duration of the training? So we work with you for as long as is necessary, okay, until you have completed your application cycle. So if you push off and don't apply for 2 years or 3 years, that's not a problem. You'll still have our services. We charge based on the number of schools, okay? And so that's how, and then it's unlimited help on that number of schools, okay? So you can go on our website, or if you email us and ask, we can send you the pricing list. There's a price for 1 school, 2 schools, 3 schools, 4 schools. And I'm not supposed to get into this, but another reason to sign up with the discount is you get to take advantage of the 2014 pricing. And come January 1 will be the 2015 pricing. And as we all know from the principles of inflation, the 2015 pricing will be higher than 2014 pricing. So not only do you get the discount of 15 or 10% off, and definitely email in if you want that 15, because we're in the 50s right now in terms of number of people. So we got about 20 spots left. So you would be getting 15% or 10% off of the 2014 pricing. Okay, so that's another benefit. All right. Somebody was asking, what do you do if you have a work history gap? So I would need to understand more, of course, about your particular work history gap. But once I understood that work history gap, we can go from there. And we explain it in an optional essay. As long as we can come up with an explanation that is both truthful and will make sense to the school, it's not a problem at all. We've had people who had gaps of 6 months, 3 months, everything like that, and that's been fine. Somebody asked about, do we offer consultation for European schools? Absolutely. So we work with all the major European schools. Every year we have folks go to INSEAD, London Business School, Oxford, Cambridge, HEC Paris, Bocconi in Italy, IE, IESE, ESADE, ESSEC. I think those are all the Spanish schools that we've worked on. IMD in Switzerland. We also work on Asian business schools like HKUST, NUS, INSEAD Singapore. And so we are very global in that sense. All right. Cool. And then the next step is somebody else also asked, what is the fee if I want to do both admissions counseling and tutoring? So it would depend how many hours of tutoring, because the tutoring is based on the number of hours. And so, basically you could have 10 hours of tutoring or 20 hours of tutoring. And so that will affect the price of the GMAT. And then how many schools you want will affect the price of the admissions counseling. All right. Let's just see here. I'm just pulling up the next question. All right. So what business schools would you recommend for an IT engineer with a 50 in the GMAT quant? So it would depend on, what your overall plans are in your career. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And so once we understand, okay, here's what your goals are, here's where you want to go with your career, then we can tell you what will be the best schools for you. Okay. All right. Somebody else had asked, how long does your service cover? I'm planning to apply in 2016. Should I engage with your company now? Absolutely. We have people already engaged for 2016, 2017, 2020, so that's not a problem at all. Okay, and the earlier the better, right? Because then it'll be even better in terms of not looking like you are doing these activities just to get into a school or something like that. All right. Hi, I am from the country of Georgia. I'd like to hear your opinion regarding online GMAT preparation. We have various face-to-face tutoring opportunities, so I'm thinking of doing an online tutor. Is it as helpful as face-to-face? Yep. So we do online tutoring. We've been doing it for almost 10 years now, and our success rates are higher, actually, through online tutoring than they are through face-to-face tutoring. Okay? So definitely something that, at the end of the day, what's important for the tutoring is who you're working with and how strong they are at teaching the GMAT, how customized the curriculum is, and ours is 100% customized to you. And so basically, the strength of the tutor, the strength of the curriculum, how customized the curriculum is to you, the fact that we have 5 CAT diagnostics, like those are the things that make for good tutoring, and it doesn't matter whether it's face-to-face. In fact, even in New York where we offer face-to-face tutoring, nobody does face-to-face because they love the online because everything is recorded. So you can actually go back and see the digital blackboard. So all the notes that were written from the previous session, you're able to see those. Okay. How is work experience at a startup considered by the top 10 universities? So it's going to depend what startup, what you did there. That's also going to be really important. And so I think startups are great, and schools have a strong preference for startups. But obviously, being a founder is going to be better than being employee number 200 at a startup. And being in a more strategic role is better than being sort of in a more like customer service role. So it'll depend on the startup and things like that. But in general, very positive. Do candidates with 10-plus years of experience and 35 years of age or higher stand a chance of getting admitted into full-time MBA programs, especially if you are an Indian IT male, which is one of the toughest applicant pools? So the answer to this question is absolutely. So we had somebody who exactly fits that profile who got into Stanford already in round 1. So they were over 35, from India, non-IIT, in IT, engineer, and they got into Stanford with our help. Okay, and they had a lower GMAT than the GMAT that you said that you had it. I didn't announce it to the group, but that you said that you had here. Okay. All right. All right. Somebody else asked if I've already done a PGM, which is sort of like a master's in management. Can you go ahead and also do an MBA? Absolutely. That is not a problem at all. Can you have a recommendation with a previous employer with whom you worked 5 years ago? Yes, that's fine as long as they have strong examples. That's not going to be an issue at all. Can activities and awards received in schools be mentioned in extracurricular activities? Well, an award, there'll be a section for awards, but then there'll be a separate section for extracurricular activities. And so, what you want to do is you want to think about, what awards you have, but then also what, so it's not just what awards you have. Awards don't count as extracurriculars. Awards are separate from extracurriculars. Okay? So awards are awards, and extracurricular activities or service activities or things like that are service activities. Somebody else asked, is there a discount off of the GMAT services as well? Yep. So the discount code, the 10% off or the 15% off will work for both GMAT and admissions, or just GMAT. So you can go ahead and email in. We have a couple of spots left. consult@stratusprep.com. Put BCG15 in the subject line, and you will go ahead and be qualified for that discount off of any services. So they asked, do you help with executive MBA applications? Well, absolutely. In fact, we have an executive MBA specialist who was on one of the top 3 executive MBA admissions committees, and he now works for us. He's worked for us for a couple of years. And so we have almost 100% success rate with executive MBA applicants, similar to our 99% success rate for applicants from the top to full-time programs. What if I have a strong undergraduate degree, but a much weaker master's degree? Do they consider the master's? So they will consider the undergrad more. The undergrad will be more important. Okay? So they'll look at both, but the undergrad will be more important. Okay? So that will work to your benefit. All right. Let's see here. Some of these questions are repeats. I'm just trying to make sure I get all of them answered, or as many as I can. And, if you have specific questions about, some people have been emailing in, I'm interested in 10 hours plus 6 schools, or I'm interested in 20 hours plus 4 schools, just email that to consult@Stratus Prep, and we will send you the information. So we can send you the particular pricing information once we know, your specific things. But I can't do the calculations off the top of my head with the discounts and everything like that. So just go ahead and email those specific questions, and we will get right back to you. Okay. This is another repeat. All right. So let's see. Just another repeat. Okay. Some folks, there were so many questions. I love all of your questions, so thank you for sending them all in. So they said, I have a master's in mechanical engineering with 6 years of work experience in mechanical firms. What kind of MBA domain should I be, looking to work in? Well, it depends what you want to do. I mean, a natural fit for mechanical engineers will be operation, but that's not the only thing that you can do. How early should a person begin preparing their MBA application for a top school in terms of how many months? So the actual physical written application, you should probably start 4 or 5 months in advance. But you should start creating the profile years in advance, or right now a year in advance if you're applying next year, because you can change the written application for those 4 or 5 months, but you can't change what you did in your life. So we definitely need to do that. All right. Even if I'm planning on giving my GMAT in the next 2 months, are you suggesting that I need to be working on creating my profile for business school now so that it reflects dates in 2014? Yes, absolutely. So do not wait until after your GMAT to start doing profile development. That is a huge, huge error because you can't reverse time. So if you wait 2 months, now we're in January, end of January or February of 2015, we can't reverse time, right? So now all of your activities will be started in 2015. That's going to be a big negative. Somebody asked how many schools do people usually work on. So it's usually 4 to 6, unless you come from a highly competitive area like New York males in finance, or applicants from India, or tech in San Francisco, and then people will do sometimes more like 4 to 8 or 6 to 8. Somebody else was asking about, chances at top 10 schools with like a 690 and, like maybe about a 3.0 GPA. You can definitely be competitive, but it's going to be all about how we position your application. So I need to know a lot more about it to know how competitive, which schools, things like that. But those numbers, 690 does not, and a 3.0 does not put you out of contention at any top school. Okay? As long as the quant is high, because that will be important for Wharton. Great. So let me just review. We have a couple of spots left. So if you want the 15% discount, email us now, BTG15, type that in the subject line, BTG15, and send that over to consult@stratusprep.com, and we will reserve for you the 15% discount. If you don't do that, you'll still have the 10% discount. Both of these discounts are good for admissions and or GMAT tutoring. They both are good until December 29th. And you can do a complimentary consultation with me. If you email consult@stratusprep, we will get that set up for you. And we are happy to provide references. So I have about 2 minutes left in this webinar. So let me, is admissions different for an MS in taxation rather than an MBA? Yes. So if you're doing an MS in taxation or an MS in finance, we help people with those programs and have specialists in those programs. But it is slightly different because it is a more it is a more specific degree, okay? And so we have to take a more specialized approach. All right. Cool. So I think we did that. Is it really critical for international applicants to visit schools as well? If it's financially feasible, you should do it because it will definitely make a real impression. International applicants, who go and visit have a huge, huge advantage because a lot of international applicants don't go and visit, so it really helps you stand out. I want to do an MPH MBA. Should I do the GMAT or the GRE? If the schools you're applying to will accept the GMAT for the MPH, then you should do the GMAT. If any school requires you to do the GRE for the MPH, then I would do the GRE. But if you can get away with doing just the GMAT, that would be our goal. How important are other professional charters, such as the CPA or the CFA? Those are nice to have. They're not going to get you in, by themselves, but those are nice to have. But then it also, presents another problem where we have to then, we then have to make sure that, with the CPA or the CFA, that we make the argument for why you still need to go to this top business school. Somebody asked, can you name the schools that get the undergraduate schools that get a GPA bump in this process? On campus, I once went to a grad school info session, and the dean for grad school said my undergrad gets a 0.5 GPA bump, and Harvard gets no bump because of their rampant grade inflation. So that is, it's very dependent on the school. 0.5 is extremely high. The schools know who inflates and who doesn't inflate. So like Wellesley is known for having great deflation. So like a 3.4 from Wellesley is probably the same as like a 3.7 from Brown, for example, which does not have great deflation. But it's not that you get 0.5. I think that person might have been trying to simplify the process a little bit. Just something to be aware of. Does your applicant pool consist of people who have not worked for prominent Fortune 500 companies? Yes, I would say more than half of our applicants do not come from Fortune 500 companies. A lot of them have done, their own thing. A lot of them have worked at startups. A lot of them have worked at family companies, smaller companies. So, we definitely don't only have people from the very top schools. Okay, this question is a repeat. Cool. Well, we need to wrap up here. If your question didn't get answered, please go ahead and just set up your consultation, and we can address it then. But signing off for Beat the GMAT and Stratus Prep, this is Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. Have a good day. Bye-bye.